How we doing out there, everybody? We are at our 10th week of the term and coming out of our fall break, our ninth week. So you saw last week's announcement. I staggered the due date. What would have been due at the end of that week, your argumentative persuasive essay, has been pushed to this Wednesday, October the 18th. So that's another 2 to 3 page essay. This time, of course, your purpose is arguing in an attempt to persuade your reader to take the position that you are laying forth in your thesis statement. Now, the big thing with this one is you don't want to use first person pronouns. There's a reason why. Using first person pronouns, I, me, we, our, us, it limits the opinion to just you, whereas you want this essay to reflect everybody. Meaning, for example, if I say, the Israel-Palestine conflict is being blown out of proportion. And I don't think that necessarily, this is just for the sake of an example. If I say that versus I think the Israeli-Palestine conflict is being blown out of proportion, the first example, I'm not saying I think. What's the purpose of that? Well, the moment I say I think or reference myself, I'm limiting my perspective to just me. Whereas what I want to do is universalize the perspective, make it objective, make it sound more factual in tone and approach. So that's the reason why you want to avoid that. If you look at SEC 3.9, there's a write-up explanation in there about why you want to remain objective, use third-person pronouns, use like anyone or someone or one or everyone or he, she, or it. So I would look at 3.9 in SEC to help craft your essay. You want to use your own sense of logic, rationality, reason. That's called logos in Greek. Ethos in Greek is another rhetorical appeal. Sounding credible and trustworthy. So you don't want to overblow the diction, the word choice in your essay and get too emotional. If you do, you're going to sound like we can't trust you because you're just carrying on, shrieking, using too many exclamation points, etc. However, you do want to use some emotion. That's called pathos. Emotional language. You could use maybe some, what you did in your descriptive essays, kind of lyrical, descriptive writing to move your reader. Pathos is all about trying to move the reader. You can, let's say you're writing about Israel-Palestine. Here is a pathos point, an emotional point. Think of all of the babies and women and children who were beheaded by side X. Take your pick, Israel-Palestine, during the recent outbreak of war over the past week. When I use think of all the babies, women, and children, that's an emotional hit right there. Of course, we care about the innocence of children, especially women as well, anybody. So that's a pathos point. But I would use that sparingly. I wouldn't overdo the emotion, because if you sound overly emotional, it'll affect your ethos, your credibility. So you want to be logical, reasonable, rational. That's logos. You want to be trustworthy, sound balanced. That's ethos. And then you want to, at times, use emotionally stirring language. That is pathos. Logos, ethos, pathos. You might have heard of those terms. We get those from Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher who himself was Plato's teacher. Aristotle was Plato's student, and Plato himself was Socrates' student. So we get these methods of argumentation all the way back to antiquity in ancient Greece. Of course, Greece, Rome, Jerusalem, these are the seedbeds of Western culture. So we're kind of giving a nod to that. So yeah, your argumentative persuasive due Wednesday. Then Friday is a wrap-up discussion forum. Speaking of Israel-Palestine, it's on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I'm asking you all to kind of engage with each other in a respectful, civil way. You could debate with each other. I'd always recommend, and this is good to do in your paper as well, to acknowledge the other side of the argument. You don't want to just come out of the gates demonizing your opponent. If someone says something objectionable or something that you find just heinous, like how could you say that? How can you think that? The better thing to do would be to say, I see where you're coming from. You make some valid points. However, I'm still going to have to disagree with you based on this. Okay, so that's an ethos thing. That's a credibility thing. If you acknowledge your opposition, that they're not just completely bat bleep out of their minds, that they have a valid opinion just as you do, you're going to sound more mature and trustworthy and credible. That speaks to your character. So in your debate, in your discussion forum, I would recommend that you keep that in mind. There are 2 videos in the discussion forum, one from a pro-Israel perspective. You might have heard of the presenter, Ben Shapiro, who is a very popular right-of-center pundit, I guess you could say journalist. He runs the Daily Wire, which is one of the foremost right-wing or right of center publications out there today, and he gives a very detailed breakdown on the conflict, where it started, who's at fault in his assessment, and then on the other side of the argument, from Al Jazeera English, their English language arm, there is their perspective on the Palestinian side of the issue. So Al Jazeera, these 2 people, Ben Shapiro lets his biases known. He is an Orthodox Jew, so he is biased for pro-Israel. Al Jazeera is going to be biased. They are Arabic. Their leanings are pro-Palestine. They, by and large, view Israel as an occupying, apartheid even force, whereas Ben Shapiro believes that Israel has always had claim to that land. Sure, the Allies, England, America, 1947, 1948, gave them the Jewish state. Some people say they had no right to give them that land. So, you guys can weigh in with your own opinions, but also after having watched the 2 videos, and they are long-ish, pushing a half hour, a little more, a little less, watch the video in the background, key in on certain things that pique your interest. Maybe you don't even have to watch the whole thing, but I recommend that you do, so that you get a comprehensive digest on both sides of the issue. After watching the videos, has your opinion been shifted? Maybe you were very pro-Israel, and I know a lot of us, I speak for myself as a Christian, I am a Catholic, so naturally, whenever I have these debates, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, I tend to side with the pro-Israel position, but I'm persuadable. I know that there's shades of gray and nuance. I could be persuaded to a degree for the pro-Palestinian side, to a degree. I'm not going to be won over, all right? But, heck, maybe after watching that Al Jazeera video, I see things in a whole new way I had never thought of before, and maybe that's you. I would ask that you try to suspend your religious affiliation and just try to argue the case from what makes sense, what is reasonable, and also what is ethical or moral, all right? So I'd imagine we have a lot of Christian folks like myself in the audience, in the class. Typically, in my experience, being Northwest Georgia, it tends to be more of a evangelical or Baptist persuasion, which is fine. Okay, Christian is Christian, and when it counts. But even if I were arguing the pro-Israel perspective, I would try to do that with putting my Catholicism on the counter and just argue based on, again, logic and ethical right and wrong moral action. And you might say, well, how can I do that without tying it into religion? I understand that gets a little dicey. Some people argue that ethics morality is downstream of religion. There's no way to separate them, but try the best that you can. So if you are a Christian, try to park your religion and just argue it from a more rational, objective standpoint. So that is your discussion forum on the Israel-Palestine conflict. 2 videos to watch. That is due Friday night, the 20th. And then your essay is due by Wednesday. I'm going to look at the essay submissions Wednesday. And if a lot of people haven't submitted, I might even extend it to Friday as well. No promises on that. But just make sure you are turning things in Blackboard in the appropriate place and on time. Again, only those submissions will receive credit unless you have some outstanding issue or you have asked me, hey, can I have an extension? And I've granted you one. Otherwise, things need to be turned in on time and in the correct place in Blackboard. So after this, after the argument persuasion part of the class, we're going to start talking about research. It's a good idea to start looking for things about your topic in Galileo. If you go into Blackboard, you will see the Galileo link there. That brings you to the academic articles and other sources written by experts in the field, peer-reviewed articles on various topics. So I would try to look for full academic journal articles. You're going to need at least 3 of those sources. To basically what you're going to be doing is plugging your sources into your argumentative persuasive essay to make a research enhanced version of your argumentative persuasive paper. That's not going to be until a week or so. We'll probably do an annotated bibliography where you actually assess your sources. That'll come next week. So we are changing things a little bit, how the syllabus has, the class rolling out. We're trying to stay as faithful as possible, but of course, syllabus course content is more of a plan, not a promise. So you might look at the syllabus and say, hey, we're not doing this week. It says so on the syllabus. Well, that's simply because things change, and as I think other things are more important, or want to change the scheduling of things, because we improvise and play by ear as we live our day-to-day lives. So you might see a discrepancy in what we're doing versus the timeline in the syllabus. So just to let you know about that. All right, so other than that, guys, keep up the good work with the paper. I will say, make sure you are adhering to the format. The format of the essay has been there for you after each unit. There's a student example, and I've told you guys to look at this in the announcements. 12-point Times New Roman, double-spaced, MLA heading, upper left hand of the page, your last name and a page number, upper right hand of each page, title and original title centered underneath the heading. Intro with a thesis at the end, your body paragraphs, and then a conclusion re-emphasizing your thesis and retouching on all your major supporting details. 2 pages minimum for these essays, except for the research essay. In a couple weeks, that'll be a little longer. More on that when we get there. So I will leave you with that. Have a good week. Any questions that you have, feel free to reach out via email, and I will help you in any way that I can. And I will see you with another video in a couple weeks. And peace. Talk to you then.